Hello. Welcome to Nintendo Deep Dive. My name is Carl, and for this video we are diving into another session of Show and Tell, featuring GameCube titles. Most of the titles I will be talking about here I have with me represented with physical media. But there are some that I will bring up that I own through digital means, or I own on another system in another format. Well, not in another format. For another system, predominantly the PS2. But I won't really be bringing the ones I own on the PS2 up. More so, certain games I have included to talk about. Well, they exist on the Xbox One as digital versions of Xbox games, if that makes sense. But otherwise, most of these games will be digital, or will be represented as physical objects in one way or another. So I just need to pull up my Steam, not my Steam list, my GameCube. My list of GameCube games on the computer here. And there we are. And then we'll get going. So, to talk about the GameCube a little bit before I start showing the games off. The GameCube is the Nintendo system where no franchise got left behind. Or more accurately, it's I don't know if epitome is the right word, but it's a great example of making new friends, but keeping the old ones as far as their franchises go. As not only did they get new franchises on the GameCube, like Animal Crossing and Pikmin, the former being only new on the GameCube, regionally speaking, to put emphasis on that. But even so, here in the West, Animal Crossing was new, Pikmin was new, and there was a few other new games as well that wouldn't necessarily catch on, but they were new franchises or new sub-franchises even. But in addition to those new franchises, we got all of our old franchises. Everything that had started on the N64 got representation on the GameCube. And that's really, really awesome. You also saw third-party support at its best on the GameCube, since the Super Nintendo at least. And you also saw, in my opinion, just within this generation in general, licensed games at their best. And, there was a lot of strong licenses kicking about in the early and mid-aughts, which no doubt was helpful in bringing these quality games about. And, there's lots of things to talk about with the GameCube, but I'll just say the last thing is that the GameCube is proof. It's proof that quality can and maybe will often go unappreciated. As you ask any moderately moderate Nintendo fan, let's say it like that, what's the best Nintendo system or what's the second best? And they're going to say GameCube probably. But that did not reflect in its sales numbers in the day, though the PS2 was stiff competition. No doubt, no doubt. So, the GameCube. We'll just jump right into the physical media. It released in November 18th of 2001, and one of its launch titles was Luigi's Mansion, which I guess is one of those new IPs, or at least a new sub-franchise anyway within an existing IP. It would later continue on quite well, like with a lot of fan support in the teen years of the 2000s, but in the GameCube's lifespan and long after, this was the only Luigi's Mansion game. And this is a player's choice version of it, which some people don't like the yellow banner or the yellow spine, but I'm not too concerned about it. So Luigi's Mansion is a game that is short, which is often the criticism for it, but my criticism for the game would actually be that it's perhaps too long. Otherwise, though, it's a really, really great game, and it really shows off the features of the system well, particularly graphics and animations. The particle effects from the dust whenever you're shining the light, like the dust in the air, looks really good to this day. And it's one of those titles that will always be unique and interesting. And it's easy to revisit because it's kind of short, except for when they try to make it longer. That's not as fun. But that came out launch day for the GameCube. And then after that, we got Wave Race Blue Storm, which I have it in an Xbox 360 case. Don't be upset with me. It's just how it went. Though I will say that I love these little discs. They definitely thirded the storage capacity on the GameCube, which was maybe a pain for developers, but in the long run, I don't think it actually mattered. I mean, it did matter sometimes, but usually it didn't. Not on the front end, anyway. And you know what? I'm going to switch these around. So those games both came out on launch day. And still on launch, and you'll find that this was a very strong launch, probably the strongest launch Nintendo has had since the Super Nintendo, and since then there hasn't been a stronger launch yet, in my opinion. Still on launch day, we got Super Monkey Ball. This was an exclusive, as you can see by the only 4. Little tear out there, little corner. Also a player's choice. An exclusive game. I think it was released in arcades possibly first by Sega. And it's a Marble Madness game, but you're a little monkey in one of these marbles and you shift the stage around to get to your goal. I have played the second game, which is kind of a mistake to play the sequels to these sorts of games, as the sequels sort of just hit the ground running with ideas that you would be familiar with had you played the first one, but seeing as that's not the way it went, you are not familiar with those ideas. Even so, there's debate about which one's better, but people like both, and people especially like Monkey Target. I think the first Monkey Target specifically, you get shot out of a cannonball, and then you have to glide onto this floating target. I think that's what it is, and there's it's part arcade game and part party game too. So launch title, exclusive. It's good stuff. Good stuff. And still on launch, we have a game I have not played yet, a licensed game that is purportedly very good, and that is Batman Vengeance. Oh look, it's Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. And then there's my ugly mug. So, Batman Vengeance, it takes after the, I don't know what the cartoon is called. That style though, like the cartoon that happened in like the 90s. I think I watched the movie with Mr. Freeze. But this is actually a very good licensed game, and it looks like a 3D cartoon, basically, or a living cartoon, however you want to say it. Don't know a lick about it, but it's like a beat 'em up, and it does look very good. And if you can see, it had the Ubisoft logo on it. Still in the middle of the launch window, or on launch day still, actually. We have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. And we got a bunch of other names down here. I assume they're other featured skateboarders. I have not played a Tony Hawk game, but I hear 3 is among the best, either 3 or 4. I mean, maybe they don't have the impact of 1 or 2, but given the graphics, I assume this is probably a much more accessible version. You can tell that these spines here, you can tell how nice they are. They all have different artwork and different coloration, with the one consistency being the banner on the corner there. This is a nice heavy disc. Nice little disc there. And as you can see here, actually, you can store a memory card up here. And let's see if the manual is colored. Manuals are really good looking stuff on the GameCube. Oh. Came out. Well, doesn't look to be colored, but that's okay. Okie dokie. So, it's supposed to be a very good extreme sports title. And while I'm not much of a skateboarding fan in real life, the idea of a skateboarding game sounds very appealing to me, as it would be very much like a platformer in a lot of ways. So, I have to look for this one because I have it slightly out of order. Ah, there we are. Now, as you can figure out, I am setting these out in chronological order as I have done for my other show and tell videos, which I'm not sure if I use that term yet, but that's what this is, a Nintendo GameCube show and tell. Now here we have another launch game, another launch license game, and a launch license exclusive. Star Wars, Rogue Leader, Rogue Squadron 2. I suppose I have them mixed up, but that's how it reads on the box. This game is marvelous to behold. Factor 5, they were always very technically savvy, and they made a game that would look good on the GameCube throughout its entire life, and a game using an intellectual property that is renowned for dazzling people. So you have a graphically competent, beyond graphically competent, rendition of a dazzling IP in this game. And more than just dazzling, it's also a lot of fun to play. And this is the height of the Rogue Squadron franchise, and in the heights anyway, of Star Wars video game media, and maybe just Star Wars media in general. I've played Star Wars Rogue Squadron on the N64. It was very good, very dazzling, very impressive on that system, and this game is supposed to be better. So, a fine launch game. And after Rogue Squadron, well, we've actually moved beyond launch day by a full 9 days. And we got this game here in this generic Xbox 360 case. And it is Extreme G3, which is a motorcycle racing game, a futuristic racing game developed or published by Acclaim, maybe even developed too. Or maybe even it was Iguana Studios. I don't think it was. I think this was one of Acclaim's internal teams, maybe Austin. So, anyway, in this game, the big selling point is you can go faster than the speed of sound if the track permits. It's very colorful, very techno heavy, and you're on these, they're essentially light cycles. In addition to going very fast, you also have weapons like machine guns and missiles to deter your opponents. It looks like a launch game in that launch game way, but it also looks like a whole ton of fun. I played Extreme G on the N64, and it was certainly competent, and this should be more than that. So, moving into December, we got Pikmin, which I have on the Wii U. I could show it to you, but I don't think we need to do that. Pikmin, the first big new franchise for the GameCube, showcasing the fact that you could have AI for 100 moving little dudes with you. You know, showing the computing power of the GameCube, which overall the GameCube was a player in that generation as far as graphics go, being stronger than the PS2 by quite a margin, though its discs, as I said, did lack the storage capacity, which was no doubt a headache. And some games would come in 2 discs, which was a bit of a hassle to change them out. And other games, like the GTAs, though it may have been for other reasons as well, just didn't come at all. But otherwise, the GameCube had, I think, a stronger processor than the PS2, and maybe even had like better effects in some cases than the Xbox, though I think the Xbox was the best of them. Though the lovely thing about this generation was there was kind of all what one would call relative parity among the three. So at some point, it's just a fanboy war to say one is so much better than the other. So the GameCube was, um, it was a really nice, beefy bit of hardware, and they demonstrated that with Pikmin, which is a very good game. And after Pikmin came out, or on the same day rather, we got SSX Tricky. There's an ongoing debate about what's better, SSX3 or SSX Tricky. With a lot of people picking Tricky as it's got all that attitude, and it doesn't have the open world or the open mountain anyway of 3, or maybe it's not open world, maybe it's just a continuous locale, but it does have zany track design and style and all of that, and this is one of those extreme sports meccas, unless I'm mistaken. Beautiful cover too, and a little bit of surface damage on there. Oh, there's even color in this manual, which is exactly what I'm talking about. Good manuals. And this is the EA Big brand. That's a nice sheen on that box art. And then after Extreme G, or after SXX Tricky, I think it was December 9th. For whatever reason, I don't have it written down on my list, but I know it off the top of my head. We got the GameCube's best-selling game on it. Basically, the reason people had the GameCube in general, and that is Super Smash Bros. Melee. You got all the characters here, not displayed here. I think this is all the starting characters. Though, no, I don't think Ness is a starting character. I could be wrong, though. Neither is Captain Falcon. I'm just lying. But Super Smash Bros. Melee, everything a sequel should be. Well, its sequel should at least aspire to be what this game is to its predecessor. This game, its art style makes it look still good to this day. Its fighting mechanics are squirrely, but very fun to get a handle on. Its roster is sizable, with 26 characters, and only a few of those are clones. Its stages are innumerable. I don't even know how many there is. And it has so many fun modes: All-Star, Adventure, Classic mode. Sorry. And it introduced trophies with write-ups. And it has this nice manual. And basically, if you only played one game, and it was this game, you would almost become a fan of every single Nintendo franchise represented here. At a distance, you wouldn't necessarily know those games, but you would know of them. You would have a connection to them. just through this game. And that's probably why I became a big Nintendo fan or had a familiarity. I never played a Pokemon game, but I knew Pikachu. Never played an Ice Climber game, still haven't. But there's the Ice Climbers, F-Zero, Captain Falcon, Donkey Kong Country, didn't play those, but there's Donkey Kong, same with Star Fox, Metroid games. You know, this is like a beautiful vertical slice of Nintendo's franchises, and typically in retrospective fashion. For instance, you could watch the general plot of Majora's Mask play out on the stage that was Termina Bay. What a cool thing. Just happening in the background. And if you were lucky, you could pop Tingle while he was over the water, putting him in his watery grave. And ain't no whale gonna swallow him and spit him up onto dry land. I ain't got nothing against Tingle, but he's fun to kill in that stage. Too much to say about this game. If you owned it, you basically had enough content on the GameCube right there. And that was in the launch window. Famously, certain executives who are now deceased were leaving their higher management posts to debug the game, and the creator was basically killing himself to have it made in a short time. So, you know, just a marvel of a game, and it came out 2 weeks or so after the launch. And then after that, we have, starting in 2002, March of 2002, we have Agent Under Fire. My brothers played this a lot when I was a kid. They liked the multiplayer and they liked the single player too. I played it myself recently, and I can't really say it lives up to the heights of 007 GoldenEye on the N64. Though it probably has better controls, and there's actually a lot of interesting level design choices they make. And it is short, maybe about a 4-hour campaign, but there's something wrong with the shooting in the game, and certain things about it feel wrong, like the gun feedback. But these vehicle sections right here were quite good, and the stealth almost worked. And I'm sure you could have a lot of fun with the multiplayer. So probably the weaker, if not the weakest, the second weakest game of the Bond franchise on the GameCube, but it's got a very nice cover. And after Agent Under Fire, we got this game that I'm holding that is not the game I'm looking for. Nor is that one. I'm just fumbling for games here. Still looking. Well, actually, I think I know where it is. Still looking. After Agent Under Fire, still in March, we got, or not in March, in April, late April, we got Burnout, the first Burnout game, which was a multi-platform release. And it was published by Acclaim, and Burnout would go on to be basically one of the most revered racing franchises there is. And, you know, I think I've made a mistake. I don't think I actually own Burnout. I own Burnout 2. Silly me. Sometimes we just make little mistakes. That's why I couldn't find it. I don't own Burnout. But it is a game that came out. After Burnout, though, just a day after, last day of April, we got a remake, but a very prestigious remake. And that is Resident Evil. Just Resident Evil. Only for the Nintendo GameCube. I think that says 2-disc product. So that's to warn you that if you only got 1 disc in secondhand sale, well, you're screwed. And this is the first of what I was talking about with the disc limitation, the disc storage capacity limitations. Even so, I think it's worth it. Aren't they so cute? So this game featured a lot of really pristine, pre-rendered textures at fixed angles, so I assume that's why it required 2 discs. And this is basically the definitive version of Resident Evil. Almost to the point that I think I didn't even realize that the PS1 game was its original release. And still the same game, but with better in quotes, voice acting and much better graphics. And maybe tweaked controls, I'm not sure. I think the game plays otherwise the same. This is a nice manual. Again, they have nice manuals during this time. My fat fingers can't fan, though. Okay. So, another exclusive. That was born out of Nintendo making an exclusivity deal with Capcom. And after Resident Evil, we would have to wait for a time until August. Late August, we got Super Mario Sunshine. A little beat up, unfortunately, but I didn't pay too much for this, and the contents of it were, well, they're still very good. And it's got this beautiful disc with a nice reflective bit of finish. I think the cover is beautiful. Oh boy, how beautiful is that? You know, I think they tell you all the controls in the manual, and I don't think I ever looked, which you should always, if you complain that the game doesn't teach you anything, these games come packed with manuals for a reason. So the contents of the game are the manual. So if you don't have the manual, you can certainly find it on the internet, but make sure you look at the manual. This game, for a Mario game, it has some noticeable flaws. Just reading this here, it's interesting, has more moves than ever. You'll Interesting. Interesting that ring has a logo. But this is a very great Mario game. Noticeable flaws, but its platforming strengths are almost unmatched with FLUDD and just Mario's general nimbleness. He's a bit squirrely, but once you get good at him in Sunshine, the other Mario games are going to feel sluggish. And the level design, there's fewer levels, but they have that organic design for organic platforming down so pat in this game, to the point that really one bad Pachinko level and one bad Poison River level and maybe one bad Yoshi level should be forgiven. It's, I mean, this game has its fans, a lot of its fans, so I don't really need to defend it. It's a very great game. Though, for many, considered the weakest Mario game. Just as many people who love, for just as many people who love it, there are people who consider it that very thing, which is fine. Same day as Mario Sunshine, which is probably a mistake. We have Super Monkey Ball 2, which is the game I played. Super Monkey Ball 2 is a game that has a very nice backside, first off. But they take the idea of Super Monkey Ball and they just go crazy with it with lots of crazy levels. I played it for about 20 hours, never beat it, got very hard. But if you're a Marble Madness fiend and you don't mind monochromatic manual pages, well, this is the game for you with also more mini games. Super Monkey Ball. Wow, it's looking like a pretty stacked list already. Still in August. We got a sequel to a well-beloved series on the N64 in the form of Turok Evolution. You know, what a funny name. Turok, or people say it funny in the games anyway, done by Acclaim. Now, one thing about Acclaim was they really loved their flashy logos. Starting with the first, or at least the second Turok, and this one has a very bloody intro with its logo. That being, Iguana Studios. When their logo pops up, it happens in a very flashy, eye-catching way, which is irrelevant, but I just wanted to bring that up. This game is considered the weakest Turok game, aside from maybe the Xbox 360 game, which is generally unrelated to the series. This one itself is a prequel. But given the controls of the games on the N64, and from what I've heard about this game and the complaints therein, it's a nice face of a guy there. I could very well see myself enjoying this game quite a bit. Not the greatest game ever made. Games don't have to be that, but with traditional controls, this could end up being my favorite Turok as far as console versions go. We'll see. So after Turok, getting into September, we have our second new IP for the Nintendo GameCube, at least introduced with the GameCube introduced this IP to us in the West anyway. And that's interesting. It had a special present on card. Memory card included. That's very nice. I don't think I have that memory card. This is Animal Crossing anyway. A very loved franchise. No memory card as I remembered. And it's all about communicating, both with the other players who share the same disc and the animals who walk around you and interact with you, or you interact with them. A lot of features with the GBA link, including a special little island. Also, you could even play NES games on this game, which at the time was a pretty big deal, though there was ways to get NES games on the GBA, which was around the time of this game or this game console. I have not played this game. I don't know if it's the best one or considered, but given all the special features that the other ones don't have anymore, I think this version is still probably well liked, and it probably has that idiosyncratic spirit that makes the first game remain special. So that was, released in September. After Animal Crossing, we got Star Fox Adventures. I have to say, this could be one of my favorite GameCube covers. It's very nice. This game was Rare's last offering, exclusive offering anyway, for Nintendo. And I believe the day after it came out, they packed their bags. That's them, all of Rare staff right there. That's what they look like. They packed their bags and went off to Microsoft, where they have had, I don't know, mixed results, one might say. This is, as a game, it is almost a mixture of a Rare platformer and a Zelda game. It was, didn't mean to do that, but since we did it, it was an upgrade. It was an upgraded N64 game, which has made some people a little upset. Not me, personally, because these graphics are wonderful. This is a beautiful game. Despite being an early release, Rare's trademark ability to really make great looking games continued with it. And with all that extra power that the GameCube has over the N64, well, I think it would be quite stupid to have it on that older system. So I apologize for bumping the camera. So the thing I would say about Star Fox 64 is it is one of the most inoffensive games when it comes to gameplay. There's certain elements wrong with it. Not the best game ever, but I quite enjoyed it. And, well, I just quite enjoyed it. What more is there to say? Let me just adjust the camera here. Got some solid puzzles, some solid fun bits. The ending is a bit bleh, but as a Star Fox game, as just an action-adventure Zelda-style game, not without flaws, but it's good. And after Star Fox Adventures came out in September, in October we got Time Splitters 2, which I don't own, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. I own it on the Xbox One via the Xbox version, and it's supposed to be a very good first-person shooter. Its pedigree being that of many of the Rareware people who worked on GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. So, people really like Time Splitters 2. I don't know why I'm moving this to the side. That can be silly. So, after Time Splitters 2, we got Medal of Honor Frontline, which came out in November of 2002. And frankly, I'm not sure I even have it here. I have a disc of it, but I may have to find it later. It's considered basically the best Medal of Honor console game of the Medal of Honors that came out during this era. And Medal of Honor, well, it was fine as a franchise during the 6th gen, and it kind of sort of started to peter out in the 7th gen. So, but this is the best of that time period. So, Medal of Honor, wherever it is. And after Medal of Honor, I don't know when this game came out. November, still in November, we got Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Essentially a game fashioned after the Zelda experience, or as experience like it, which is very good news for me. This is a game that visually it's actually quite different from the movies. They go for a more cartoony look, and I think it has made the game age relatively fine, actually. So smart on them. And this is, I think, everybody's favorite Harry Potter game. I just try to... I can't get the spine to... Or I can't get it to focus on the spine there. And this was done by EA. That little logo right there. And black and white manual, that's okay. I have not played it, other than Diagon Alley, which has this very lovely theme in Diagon Alley in the game. And that's all I can say about it thus far. But I think it's people's favorite Harry Potter game. And at this point, you can really see that EA is putting out quality stuff with... Well, that one's okay, I guess, but EA Big and Harry Potter. There's a few more games coming up, such as... Well, not such as this, but this is another big deal game. Metroid Prime. Video Game of the Year. Jeu Video di LNA. It's like, you can tell that's like anno, like in Latin. LNA. Because, it's a Canadian copy. I hope you all enjoyed my horrible attempt at French, which I never bothered to learn in Canadian school. This is a fantastic game. It probably employs the greatest level design in a game ever. The world design and the atmosphere design and graphics. Gosh, the graphics in this game are good. Casework, not in love with, but it kind of shows off Samus. I think it shows off Samus in that with that new design, which is important. And yeah, I have this on the Wii or the Wii U with Metroid Prime Trilogy, but I wanted to have a version, the original GameCube version, because I thought the graphics might actually be better via the GameCube as... Well, I'm not going to explain it, but the graphics are good on the Wii Trilogy, don't get me wrong. But anyway, doesn't matter. This game, pretty much the killer app. I mean, with this, if we can just go down, Luigi's Mansion down here, not necessarily a killer app, but very good. This game is a must-own, must-own, must-own. Maybe this one too, maybe a must-own. And then another must-own. You can kind of see the must-haves are just piling up on the GameCube in a year's time, alongside some very good games. And then, after that, reaching down blindly, November 18th, 2002, a day after Metroid Prime, we got 007 Nightfire, which multi-platform game with the GameCube title being very competent and very good. I don't really have problems with C-stick, with aiming with the C-stick on the GameCube controller. So very competent version of this game. And just a very competent James Bond game overall. Interestingly enough, it actually lacks a lot of FPS, just standard FPS missions. There's a lot of vehicle missions and stealth missions, non-lethal stealth missions, and experimental missions, all of which are very fun. Maybe a little gimmicky. They're very good and they freshen up the pace, but just the standard missions where you're firing a gun are very good in this game. And I would say, well, I don't know if I would say this actually, but this is considered, or it's considered by a few people, but rightfully so, this could be the best James Bond game that was ever made. It's very good. The multiplayer, which I did not play with other people, I played with bots, and it was very enjoyable. And the campaign's solid, and the level design's good, and it looks good. Only problem is I don't think they have Pierce Brosnan's voice. They have his likeness, but not his voice. This is a very good FPS on this system. And it was done by EA. So EA, who's not very loved nowadays, they were doing very good stuff. Seen a lot of player's choice boxes there, more than I thought I had. So after 007 Nightfire, going into December, the second last day of December, I believe, the 30th, we got The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which was developed by Stormfront for EA. And this game, it's not the best Lord of the Rings game of the two, not the best movie game, but it's very enjoyable. It has a bit of an odd fixed camera angle that can get you in trouble, but you know, just mind the edges of the screen, I guess. Otherwise, super fun, very difficult, very short, but very replayable. You have Aragorn here. You have 3 characters, maybe 4, but I think 3 to start with. Aragorn's probably balanced with a lot of reach. Maybe he's just more of a reach fiend. Legolas, who was, I figured, to be the cheap character. He's not actually the cheap character, as he, up until you have to get to the last of his levels, because you level up in this game. And the gameplay, which I haven't gotten into, is basically a hack and slash or a beat 'em up. But he gets some really cheap arrows at the end, but his very short daggers actually make him a liability. So he's actually hard mode. And then Gimli's just a tank. He can just kill this goblin in one light attack. So Gimli is actually a lot of fun in this game. His reach is a little compromised, but he moves quite fast, or he just looks like he's moving fast because he's moving at the same speed as the other characters, though being 2/3 the size. This is a very fun game. It's got some irritating mission objectives, but maybe if they removed those, the game would be even shorter and feel even more insubstantial. So maybe it's not a problem. My favorite level in this game is Fangorn Forest because it's also one of the most frustrating ones, but it's very memorable for that. A very good license game. And, you know, as you can see, we got a lot of EA logos popping up. Gonna have to move those to the side, as after Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. So this is all the way in March of 2003. we get, well, not that one. We get Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc, which I own on the Xbox One. It's a shame though, because the GameCube version has some really good GBA special features that include 2 players. Anyway, still in March though, after Rayman, we got The Wind Waker, which, as I pulled it out, that title theme just started playing in my head. I don't know how I feel about this box. It's a little too gold and bland, which is often what they did with Zelda boxes during this time. But I like that you can kind of see the boat and Link in the backdrop here riding the waves. And it's a very nice logo with these wind currents being quite beautiful and stylized. This game, I once said to my brother, because he was talking about, he's like, oh, well, it's not as good as Wind Waker, talking about another game. And I said, well, as a general rule, no game is as good looking as Wind Waker, which I suppose is a touch subjective, but you know, if you have good taste, I guess. I'm not really going to mince words about it. This is a fantastic looking game, and I don't want to hear otherwise. Also has some really good GBA features with Tingle, which I have not used yet. I would maintain that the Wii U version of this game is very good in a lot of ways, but due to the purity of the art style, the GameCube version is the best, or preferable to me anyway, as the art style is at its purest and it never breaks or gives way, and it's more coherent and ironclad in the art style of this game. It's a living cartoon, it's beautiful, and not only is it just beautiful for its own sake, it also works within the greater themes of the game, the nautical theme. And the items that you get in this game also play into that swashbuckling feel, like the grappling hook, for instance. There's a lot to talk about with this game. This is another must-have for the GameCube, coming out early in March 2003. It was initially hated for its graphics, which again, the GameCube was never really appreciated in its day, though I don't think anybody would stand around to hear such an opinion nowadays. Both in concerns to the GameCube and this game we have here. So after The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, just reaching out and grabbing a game, we have Burnout 2 Point of Impact coming out in April of 2003. This game was the last one that would be published by Acclaim, which I believe went bankrupt shortly after. And with that, you didn't get any more Burnout games on the GameCube. And this was a much better game, or at least a considerably better game than the first one, though it wasn't quite at the heights that the series would reach on the other systems when those renditions came out. I have not played it, but I look forward to playing it, certainly. And after Burnout, still in April, early April, we got Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, which I also own on the Xbox, so whatever. Supposed to be a very good stealth game. And Michael Ironside is a treasure. And after that, still in April, very busy April. We got Ikaruga, which was an exclusive on the Dreamcast in Japan and was in the arcades in Japan, but this was the only version we got in the West on the GameCube. So basically a GameCube exclusive done by Treasure, which, well, I also own that on the Xbox. Luckily, though, Treasure, in just some time after, in June, would release another game on the GameCube. Or develop it anyway. And that is Wario World, which is basically a Wario Land game. But they they made it 3D. I paid quite a sum of money for this game, and it's very short, and I'm not sure it's the best game ever, but I think it's very good, and it looks really nice, as most GameCube games do. I find that the GameCube did not have terribly dynamic lighting, and when you have cartoonish characters, that is a good thing. Just like with Wind Waker, just like with any of the games, really. So, I have not played this game, but you have a lot of different attacks and wrestling moves because it is developed by Treasure, so there's a lot of emphasis on the action, which is cool. A little more interesting than the shoulder bash that you do in other Wario Land games. So after Wario Land, having to reach real low here, in July, just a month later, we got, well, we didn't get these games. We got Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. Ah, there we are. Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, which I never noticed that little Mario silhouette with the logo there. That's very nice. Another player's choice to irk some people. This game, I think, is considered at least the second best Mario Golf game. It has 7 courses. What if it says any of that anywhere? And of those 7 courses, they're among the most creative in the franchise. And the game looks really good and it's supposed to play very good. It was developed by the people who did Hot Shots Golf, if I'm not mistaken. And look at that. It's a golf ball. Isn't that cute? I think we saw that with one of our Wii games the other day. It has a beautiful manual. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I don't actually play golf very often, but if you put Mario on it, I'll give it a shot. And this is a very well-regarded Mario sports game. And again, it was developed on the N64 first, and we're getting another taste of that on the GameCube. And on that note, the note of games that were developed for the N64, we got F-Zero GX. I should say I don't own any of these games from my childhood. Like well, actually, I'll hold that thought for later, but this is a game I bought very recently, maybe a year and a half ago, at a cost, because it is supposed to be one of the best racing games there is. And I could believe that because F-Zero X is one of the best racing games there is. So it's very possible that this, or very likely this game carries that forward, at least to parity. So now, of course, this is only for the Nintendo GameCube. And yeah, it's F-Zero GX. Not a player's choice, which I guess is pretty nice. Though I don't know if it sold that well, so maybe that's why it never became one. And this game, loved by the F-Zero X community, and basically the last F-Zero, that we received, the last console one anyway. So I was going to say that this is the only GameCube game, original GameCube game from my childhood that I've carried over. I kept it safe all these years. All the other GameCube games, Smash Brothers 60 or Smash Brothers Melee, I don't know what happened to it. I think it died in a flood. And then there's a few other games still, but yeah, all these games are new. Though I did play and have played quite a few of them, but the majority I have not played. So after F-Zero GX, which came out in August still, we got Soul Calibur 2, which was not a exclusive for the GameCube, but it did have an exclusive feature with our favorite green-hatted man. And with that addition, I believe that basically made the GameCube version of Soul Calibur 2 the definitive one. I'm sure the PlayStation fans might say that they prefer Heihachi. I'm sure two people would say that Spawn would make the Xbox version the one that's most definitive, but I think this is the definitive Soul Calibur 2 experience on the GameCube with Link. The game looks very good. It's a weapon fighter, and I haven't played a lick of it, but it looks very good graphically. And after Soul Calibur 2, we got a licensed game, a very well-renowned licensed game with The Simpsons Hit and Run. It's essentially a GTA clone in the Simpsons world. And it's got a beautiful box, beautiful back of the box, nice spine as well. And yeah, it's very nice. In the game, I think the Simpsons people were involved with it very heavily, so all the voice actors are here, and you drive around and play all the Simpsons characters and meet lots of other different Simpsons characters, and I'm very excited for it. It just looks really funny, specifically that you can't like beat people up on GTA, but you can kick them and they make like a pylon noise as they roll on the ground in a very non-fussed way. They don't really care that you're kicking them around like a pylon, which is very, very hilarious. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. And that came out in September. September of 2003. So, as you can see, as I was saying, lots of great licensed games with The Simpsons Hit and Run, and the James Bond games, Nightfire, Harry Potter, Rogue Leader, Pro Skater 3, Batman Vengeance. Really strong third-party support and really great licensed games. So after all that, just continuing on, we got another licensed game that was quite good, Tony Hawk's Underground, which I believe it introduced an open world to Tony Hawk. Yeah. I don't really know where it says that. And it's very, very good. Now, this came out after Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, which I own on the PS2, and you may see later in another video. But don't have much to say about this one other than I think the playground's just a lot bigger. And after that, I have to reach down here. Another well-liked licensed game. Oh, I was bad. Tony Hawk's. I am very, very. That doesn't go there. I'm ahead of myself. After Simpsons Hit and Run, in October, we got Freedom Fighters from the makers of Hitman 2. And this is a game where you can make allies with AI people, and I think you kind of raise an army to fight the Russians in New York. And it's done by Eidos, or iOS, maybe. Published by EA. EA's doing good stuff, as I said. And don't know much else to say about it. It's a third-person shooter. The control seems good from what I played. And it's got a very stylized look to make it age well. It's kind of hard to see from here. And after Freedom Fighters, still in October, we got Kirby Air Ride. This game is magnificently creative. There are some who bemoan the fact that we didn't get a traditional Kirby game on the GameCube. And I think those people are a bit silly, as this is much better than a traditional Kirby game. It didn't review well at the time, and I think its main criticism was that the only control input you have to do is hit A. And that's not even to speed up, it's to slow down around certain corners. Though you also have to move left and right as well. So that's kind of a silly complaint because, I don't know, you don't really use that many buttons when it comes to vehicle games anyway. You use the shoulders, maybe the brakes occasionally, but really it's just the shoulders for drifting, the stick for steering, and the A for how do I put it? A for the gas. So this game, you only use A for braking and you use the stick. I don't know. It's not really important to a racing game how many buttons you use. The levels, the racing tracks in this game are very good. And the modes, there's so many fun modes. There's one really throwaway top-down mode, which I appreciate that it's in there because it's another mode. But the other mode, in addition to the racing, is City Trials, which is magnificent. It's essentially an arena mode where you fight other characters to gain loot, and then that loot beefs up your stats. And not only that, you also can find better vehicles. And then you have a final challenge at the end of all of that. And it's a lot of fun. It's always different. And there's something super great about the flat textures all around city trials. The level of it kind of makes it look like a rezzed up N64 game in a good way. And the game is wonderful. Like, I can't even fathom how good they made it. It has beautiful music, a lot of the best original Kirby music since the game's inception and since Kirby Superstar happened with Air Ride. And I'm glad that Sakurai got to make an interesting game rather than another Kirby side scroller, which are fine, but they're not as good as that. And it's also another fantastic racer on the system, which you got with the likes of GX and Kirby Air Ride, as I just mentioned, and Burnout, and well, there's a few more technically. Tricky's technically a racer, and there's more racing games yet. Kind of continued on that strong element from the N64. So after Kirby, we got SSX3, which, oh no, not SSX3. Okay. After Kirby, we got Rogue Squadron 3, Rebel Strike. This is a very good game, a very, very good game, with a reputation that is brought down by some poorly designed ground missions, which I think people overstate how bad the ground missions are. Though, in fairness, I think you can see it here. If you're playing the Hoth battle from the ground, which I guess is technically accurate to the movie to a degree, if you're playing the Hoth mission from the ground, I can understand the bitterness. Otherwise, though, still has that really great Rogue Squadron gameplay and even better Rogue Squadron graphics, you know. And even if you didn't like the ground missions, it gave you a very nice look at some of the movies, at some of the set piece moments from the movies, which is what they were going for. And there's one other thing that's really great about this game. It's right in here. Don't know if I can show it. Special feature, 2-player cooperative version of Rogue Leader game included on Rebel Strike disc. So, this game's basically worth owning because you get to play Rogue Leader cooperatively. And on its own, it's a very good game. Maybe the weakest of the three, but people should not fixate on only the bad. It's quite narrow-minded and negative. And don't get me wrong, I'm somebody who can be very negative when it's called for. So that came out... When did that come out? In October, just a couple days after Kirby. And after Rogue Squadron 3, we got SSX3, pardon me, in October as well, which I own on the Xbox. And then we got this game, which I already talked about. And now I've hit the camera with it, but it can go on the pile. And following after that license game, we got another license game that's very good. I've played it to completion and it was very good. And that is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Now, I was under the impression with this helmet and this right here, very lovely box art in general, that we would be getting a more military, how shall we say, aesthetic with this game. But we don't really. In this game, you go on a lot of adventures where you kill lots of enemies, but you never do it with a military thematic motif or overture accompanying you. So you play as 3 characters in this game. Sandy's the best because she can hover, kind of do like a Dixie Kong twirl to keep air. With her lasso, SpongeBob can slide with his tongue, which is kind of gross, but whatever. Patrick is a guy who can carry things, and you can switch between characters. Not necessarily at will, but at certain stops. I enjoy this game because it's a really lovely rendition or approximation of Bikini Bottom, and I think it took place at the show's height. I just really like SpongeBob, even though it's for children. That's good stuff, and this is, I think, the best SpongeBob game, or is considered to be. Maybe that's changed, but I played it, and it's not the greatest game ever, but it's a very strong 3D platformer, which is more rare and valuable than one might think. And the game does a good job of having one central collectible just out of reach to string you along, and all the while that you are being strung along, you find other things, other collectibles to keep you engaged while you go for that main one. And when I say the main one, they're technically all the same collectible, a golden spatula, but there's the one kind of through line with each level that you are following through to get that final golden spatula. So that's SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. And after SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, sticking with the licensed game theme, we got the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. This game is better than its predecessor in almost every way. The one being that it's not necessarily hard enough, or the one way in which it's weaker, I mean. It's not necessarily hard enough, and Gimli is not very good in it, which is a shame. He's still usable, but you might as well not. This is a fantastic license game, basically a good demonstration of everything a license game can be. It does this wonderful thing where it mixes the footage of the movie with the game in almost flawless fashion, transitioning from one to the next, and that way you don't get like a loose approximation of the movie story. You get the movie story, the important bits that are relevant anyway. And there's even unused footage that you wouldn't see until the extended version of that movie. And I believe this came out 2 weeks or maybe a month before The Return of the King. Maybe a month. It came out November 5th. And it's a slash 'em up. It's very good. And it's almost as one-to-one with the license that the license it's representing. So it's no secret to many people that this game is very good. This is not a hidden gem. This is just a well-known property, and for good cause. And it has co-op, which is very, very fun. And after Return of the King, we got an original property from a third party. It was a multi-platform, but an original game, I believe at the time, taking inspiration from Zelda, I believe. We got Sphinx and the Curse of the Mummy, or I think it's and the Cursed Mummy. Sphinx is like the god, and the Cursed Mummy is like King Tut, I believe. And you split the difference between them as far as gameplay goes, with lots of puzzles and action and a cartoony art style. Kind of seemed hokey to me, but actually it's quite good. An original property by Eurocom, who has developed many of the games, the licensed games I've talked about thus far, such as Harry Potter, Nightfire, and I'm sure one more yet. They didn't do Agent Under Fire, which is fine because it wasn't very good anyway, but well, I think they just, Sphinx, Nightfire, and Harry Potter. And after here we go. After Return of the King, or after Sphinx and the Curse of the Mummy, which came out in November, we got Crash Nitro Kart, which is a sequel to Crash Team Racing, I think, or I think it's Crash Team Racing. And I don't know if it was as beloved as that PlayStation Classic, but it's very good from what I've heard. It just doesn't really move the franchise forward, but better graphics, new racetracks, story mode, I believe, which I think the first one also had a story mode. I don't know, sounds good to me. I don't know what else there is to say about it. I haven't played it, but I heard it's good. And after Crash Nitro Kart, we got Sierra Entertainment presents The Hobbit. And this game, nothing to do with the movies, or has nothing to do with the, when I say the Hobbit movie, the movies, I mean the Hobbit movies, and nothing to do with the Lord of the Rings movies. It has its own art style, and it's its own game. And it's a game that I remember playing as a child, finding very difficult. And I played it maybe a year or two ago during Christmas, and I really enjoyed it. Well, I didn't really enjoy it. I enjoyed it. It's kind of a mixture between Mario 64 and Zelda, with one level being particularly like Zelda. The combat's very simple. In fact, some of the moves you unlock are just an added slash in a very basic slashing combo. It's really nothing quite that good. But the art style can be good. Other times it can be kind of muddy, and it doesn't really convey the Lord of the Rings richness all that much. But then other times it does. The level where you're in the goblin mines is so big and so vertical. You're climbing up and up, and you're looking down into these pits with all these wheels, like I don't know, wheels. I don't know what you would call it other than that. They're just like just machines, I guess, for mining, and all these catwalks that you're walking on the sides of the pit, and it's just really impressive. And I overall really enjoyed this game. And there's one scene out of the books where you're wandering around smog that's really quite accurate and enjoyable. Overall, not the greatest thing ever made, but another Lord of the Rings product. A lot of another Lord of the Rings product this year. The year of our Lord 2003. Big for Lord of the Rings. And still in November of 2003, we got what could be considered the biggest game yet, after Wind Waker maybe, and that is Mario Kart Double Dash. This is, in my estimation, or by my estimation, the best Mario Kart. And it just does so many interesting little things. Its controls are very high performance, so there are times where getting out of the way of a banana will launch you off the edge, and it's much easier to just recover from getting hit by a banana as opposed to falling off the edge. So you just get hit by the banana. So that can sound frustrating, but it's just a decision you make. The interesting thing about this game is that it's just a lot of small choices that make it the best one. One of those choices, maybe not so small, is that you can't hold an item behind you. So if you're getting tailed by a red shell and you have a banana, there's actually a timing to spiking that red shell with a banana. Or if you don't have a banana, the red shell pathfinding isn't so perfect, so you can actually lose it around a screw. What would be the word? It's like you can lose it around a winding turn if the turn's sharp enough. And likewise, if you're mid turning, you have to straighten out to throw the banana to ensure that it's going to get in the way of the red shell. And other things, because it's double dash, you have double the people and double the items, and more than just double the items, you often have quadruple the items, or whatever, 6. You have 6 times the items sometimes, and it all depends on what character you're using, or what combination of characters. And so the items are actually less potent. So it means that you actually have to hit the characters more for the desired effect. It's not just a red shell and then you're ahead, which I actually appreciate. You have to be very persistent in the game. And that's very, very cool. And another small thing that they do that makes the game awesome is the all Grand Prix mode, which has you race all 16 tracks randomized, with the first track always being Mario Circuit or Luigi Circuit. I think it's Mario Circuit or Luigi Circuit. I don't know. I think it's Luigi Circuit. I'm not quite sure. And the last one being Rainbow Road. And me and my sister, very recently, not when we were kids, but just very recently, we decided to win every race, get first place in every race in the all Cup Grand Prix mode. And we did it 3 times. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great game. It actually requires lots of skill. And the tracks, there's only 16. But they are fantastic. So, best Mario Kart. And then, after Mario Kart, we got a game called Metal Arms, which I don't have on my person, which is considered a very good game by many people. And, Well, I'm not sure I'm one of those people, but it was very cool and had lots of personality, for sure. Anyway, I don't have it here, but still in November, we got a must-play game, apparently. Don't know if it says it on the box, but that is Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, which is a 3D platformer where you can rewind time. It takes place in Persia, so it has a Persian aesthetic, has lots of parkour platforming, and this game was huge when it first came out and is still considered a great game. And people always just love this first game over the rest, I think. And still has its fans, I imagine. I have not played it, but I like the idea of a 3D platformer that actually has set levels and a continuous world, but a maybe more linear world than, say, an Assassin's Creed, which I assume much of the talent behind this game got absorbed into. I think this game has like a 96 on Metacritic. And it was Ubisoft's big game. So that is all the games I'm going to show for this session, for part 1. If you would like to see more games on the GameCube, please look for part 2. Thank you.